Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. Today I'm going to be talking about some tech, especially China tech. And those of you who don't know, if you haven't subscribed to my new channel, make sure you do so. And I have started a new channel for those of you who just joined. And the links are in the description. It's called Multipolar World Order. So make sure you check it out. Go to that channel and try and watch some videos. If you watch the videos from start to end, it really helps the algorithm. I'm also posting on my old channel because mainly a lot of you have not subscribed to my new channel yet. So I'm having to upload on my old channel as well, just to let people know that I've started a new channel. So this is why I'm uploading on both channels at the moment. So make sure you go there and subscribe. I really appreciate it. So let's start the show. So recently, Nvidia came on an American news channel, and he's talking about his trip to China. And I'm not going to play the full clip because the full clip is quite long. To save you time, I'm just going to summarize it for you. And you're welcome to check the full interview in CNBC. I wouldn't recommend you guys listening to CNBC, by the way. It's just American propaganda. So, but this interview in particular was very interesting. So he was talking about how basically Trump and Biden have destroyed the Nvidia chip market in China. He said that, he understands China wants to develop their own chips. And at the moment, they have bought absolutely zero H200s from Nvidia. And he says he understands China. He says you cannot build an architecture, you cannot build a supply chain, you cannot build AI data centers, you cannot build a technology company, you cannot build a country based on a leader changing his mind and putting export controls, every time he feels like it. So he's having a go at Biden. He's also having a go at Trump because Trump started it all and Biden carried it on. So he basically said that, he totally understands China's market. And this is what's happened, guys. Basically, Trump wakes up one day and he decides to put all of these tariffs, export controls on Chinese companies. Biden does exactly the same thing, but Trump basically does it on his feelings. Trump does it literally, Trump can change his mind literally 10 times a day. In the morning, he'll want to place sanctions on China. And in the afternoon, he'll want to take it off because it's not working like he desired. And then he'll add extra sanctions, take it up to 145% with the tariffs. And then when China fights back, he wants to back down again. This is what Trump is like. He basically makes decisions on his feelings and also makes his decisions basically based on whoever's talking to his ear at the time. So in the morning, he might hear somebody might give him some advice, and he might make a decision on his China policy based on that. And in the afternoon, he'll get different sort of advice from somebody else, and he'll make a different decision based on that. So Trump only makes his decision based on who the last person he spoke to. So Jensen was right. China cannot build a country based on Trump's instability. What is the point, right? For example, let me show you something, guys. I think a lot of people are confused in the West, and a lot of people are brainwashed in the West. They think that China is begging Nvidia or America for Nvidia chips. It's not like that at all. China does not need that kind of crap because these are crap chips, guys. They have backdoors. They have security flaws. They have so many issues. But the worst issue is that fact that you as a company, you are under risk. America can place sanctions or tariffs on you within a day, within overnight. And if you spend millions on buying these chips, it would have been absolutely useless. So people think that, China's begging Nvidia to buy these chips. No, guys, no. So let me show you something. A lot of people don't understand something about Nvidia. Let me show you something that will shock you. So this is a basic, Google AI thing I've typed. And you can see in the heading, I said, is H200 approved to be sold to Huawei? And you can see, no, Nvidia is not authorized to sell the H200 to Huawei. They are not allowed to sell to any company that is in their entity list. So what is the entity list? This is the entity list. Approximately 1,100 Chinese companies are in the entity list. And this is the list of companies that Trump and Biden administration have come up with that they cannot sell advanced chips to. So what's left? How many companies are left to buy the H200 chips? Hardly any, because these 1,100 companies are some of the top companies in China. So yeah, I mean, you don't have Alibaba or Tencent in there, but they might be in the future. Who knows? Fact is, if you're a Chinese company and you buy millions dollars worth of H200 chips, let's just say you pay this to Nvidia. Nvidia gives the cut to Trump, so Trump makes money, Nvidia makes money, and then Trump wakes up the next day and he decides to put your company in the entity list, and that's it. You're sanctioned. So you wasted all of that money, guys. You wasted millions. You wasted all that money, and you're next day you're on the entity list. So what are you going to do about it? Nothing. You can't do anything about it. So this is why Chinese companies will be absolutely, they will be completely, silly to buy H200 chips. Completely silly. Plus, the H200 chips are not the best chips. They are going to be the third best chips. The best chips at the moment is the Blackwell chip, which is totally banned from to be sold in China. But Nvidia is releasing a new chip in the next few months, and Blackwell is going to be the second best chip, which means H200 is going to be the third best. So why would China buy the third best chip, which is got full of holes, back doors, security flaws, and you are under such huge risk that you could be placed under the entity list any given moment? Why would China take a risk and do that? It makes no sense, right? Plus, that 1,100 Chinese companies are in the entity list. So if you want to sell to China, get rid of the entity list. Tear it up. Maybe then China will buy chips from you. It's like, it's like, for example, you're trying to buy some beef, right? And you go to the market to sell your beef, and one customer comes up to buy some beef, and you say to the customer, "No, I don't like the look of you. I don't like ugly people. You can't buy my beef." So all the ugly people will not turn up at your shop. And then a woman comes up to buy some beef, and you said, "No, I'm not going to sell to you. I don't sell beef to women." So the women will stop coming to buy your beef. And then a man comes up to buy some beef, and you said, "Oh, I don't like men. I'm not going to sell my beef to you because I don't like men." So all the men are not going to buy beef from you. So who have you got left to sell beef to? Nobody. This is exactly what this is. You know, China would have happily bought Nvidia H200 chips, but all the companies that wanted to buy H200 chips, they've all been in the entity list. They're all in the entity list. They are not allowed to buy. So who's left? Hardly anybody's left. These 1,100 companies, they're some of the best tech companies in China. That includes DeepSeek, Huawei, many other, amazing companies. America has totally shot itself in its foot, and it's all their own fault, all of it. Yeah, you can blame Trump, you can blame Biden, but at the end of the day, businesses went along with it. Businesses are the ones that sanctioned, China. They should have been protesting. I don't see Nvidia protesting. I don't see all these other tech companies protesting what the government's doing. They should be standing up and say, look, you cannot do that. You cannot, if you do these things, if you sanction or tariff, we will lose business. You can't, so you cannot do that. They should have said that in the beginning, but no, they didn't want to do that because do you know why they didn't want to do that? Because they are all anti-Chinese guys. They're all anti-China. They want China to fail, all of them, because they know China is taking away some of their business. So they want to destroy China alongside Trump, alongside all these people, Elon Musk, Jensen, all of them. They all, support the tariffs. They all support sanctions. But when the time comes, they want to go to China and with a begging bowl, asking for money, asking for them to buy their goods when the time comes. But behind the scenes, they want to destroy China. You guys need to understand that. They are all part of it. So there's another story as well. China's released a DRAM, and obviously, you know, DRAMs have been in the market for a long time. Basically, the main companies that used to do them is Samsung, SK Hynix, uh, Intel, and many other companies as well that used to do these DRAMs. There was no Chinese companies in the mix. Maybe like a year ago or two years ago, there was no Chinese companies whatsoever. But now people are starting to notice Chinese DRAMs, especially in global companies as well. So there's a there's this article that the memory cartel is about to fall. The reason they call it the memory cartel is because companies like Samsung, SK Hynix, Micron increased their price of DRAMs from, you can see from here, $6.84 to $27.20 in 3 months. So can you see they are just basically using the DRAM market as some sort of global cartel, and they're increasing the prices. They are blaming obviously the Iran war, supply chain problems, and also they are blaming China. They are blaming China because of China's export controls. So because of that, and the price of oil is going up as well, and many other global issues, they had to increase their price from 6,000 to 27,000. So now what's happening is American companies are now using Chinese DRAMs, and they're saying that Chinese DRAMs are going to flood the market. They're going to take market share from companies like Samsung, HK Hynix, Micron, and many other Western companies. So my take on it is they deserve it. Yeah. Yeah, that's my take on everything, guys. They deserve it. But yeah, it's just they asked for it, guys. I mean, look, they are using these DRAMs as some sort of global cartel. They are increasing the price, and they know tech companies will pay for it because companies around the world, they need it for servers, computers, AI, and things like that. So it doesn't matter how much they increase, companies will pay for it. At the end of the day, we pay for it because we have to pay for, the technology. And yeah, now Chinese companies are starting to sell DRAM in the market. And obviously, you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, this was unheard of because China didn't really have a semiconductor industry or DRAM market. They were happily buying Western goods. Then Trump started his trade war against China, and then China started to become self-sufficient in everything: semiconductors, DRAMs, memory, storage. They produce their own servers. The operating system is theirs. They have their own databases. They have their own, e-business suites. They have their own HR product. Every single thing, every single software, hardware, China is now making its own because they don't trust Western products anymore because of all these tariffs and sanctions that Trump placed on China. So now it's hitting them back. They basically tariffed and sanctioned the wrong country. They tried to do it with Russia, they tried to do it with China, they tried to do it with Iran, and now these countries are now fighting back. And the Americans and the West, they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know what to do. It's all their own fault, guys. I mean, at the end of the day, China was happy to be a part of the free market. They were happy to buy American goods. Then they decided to use the dollar and products as a weapon, and that's what happens. If you use your dollar as a weapon, you will lose the dollar. If as a world reserve currency, if you use your products as a weapon, if you use your tech as a weapon, you will lose that tech because the countries are seeing what you're doing and they will start producing their own or they will diversify. This is why you should never ever use your products as weapons. Never use tariffs against the wrong country. They use tariffs against the wrong country with China. They use tariffs against the wrong country against Russia and against Iran. Because these people are very, very intelligent people. These are not cavemen we're talking about. These are very, very intelligent people. There are 1.4 billion Chinese living in China, and there are 10 times more graduates coming out of China with STEM subjects compared to the United States or the West. So obviously, they will come up with new technology, new ways of solving problems. Technology is not it's not something you can control. What are you gonna, if there's 1.4 billion Einsteins, what are you gonna do? Stop selling them, you know, books or things like that. You cannot stop their progress, guys. Chinese education is much more better than Western education, and Chinese graduates are much brighter compared to their Western counterparts. And this is why, you have top companies in the United States. They're all either Chinese or Indians. Companies like Tesla, SpaceX, Intel, all of these major companies, all these tech companies, they're just full of Chinese or Indians. So yeah, I think the problem with the West is many Western students, they do like useless degrees and also, the problem is the West is too focused on isms, right? So when I say isms, I'm talking about feminism and wokeism. All these isms, are controlling the West. And this is the problem. And because they are focused on all these isms, kids are growing up not knowing what gender that they are, for example. They get really confused about their gender, about their sexuality. And this is why, when kids are confused at that age, they don't perform well in schools or education. And plus, many kids in the West, I've noticed, are raised by single mothers. If you want a good, successful child, they need nourishing love and nourishing from both parents. Those are the kids that become the most successful. They have the less mental health issues. They have more. You know, they have the masculine and the feminine energies within them, and they tend to do better. You know, don't quote me on that, but there's a lot of broken families in the West, especially. I mean, I live in UK, and I see single mothers everywhere, and it's very, very hard to raise kids when you're a single mother because you have to go to work, you have to make money, and you have to raise a child, so you're hardly there to even be around the child because of the cost of living and inflation. It's very, very difficult if you're a single mother. So these kids, they do not get the love and the nourishing from both parents. And a lot of these kids, when you come from broken families and broken households, they're not interested in, becoming doctors or successful people. They just want, they become very, very messed up. And this is why a lot of them, in UK especially, the Gen Z, they have the highest form of mental health in all of Europe, highest number of mental health patients in the UK, mainly kids, Gen Z, and stuff like that. So yeah, this is the Western woke virus, guys. Women who think that they can make money using OnlyFans, and you know, we are living in a broken system, a broken society in the West. So this is the company I was talking about. The Chinese company is called CXMT, and they produce DRAMs, and their product has been found on Corsair. Corsair is an American company, so it's ending up all the way in America, basically. And the West, they're not happy about it. I can tell you that now. So let's talk about the second part of this video. I'm going to talk about China's own Manhattan Project. For those of you who don't know what Manhattan Project is, basically, have you guys seen that movie, Oppenheimer, by Christopher Nolan? So that's basically the Manhattan Project. So the United States wanted to build a nuclear weapon, and they brought all the best scientists from around the world and they put them in a room together and they said, we'll give you unlimited money, resources, just make a nuclear weapon for us. And that's what they did. They built a nuclear weapon. And obviously they tested it on Japan. A live test, by the way. I'm not talking about the nuclear tests they do on remote islands um, like the Marshall Islands. They've been testing it on, and all the people in the Marshall Islands as well, destroying all the nature and wildlife and marine life. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a real test on real people, populated cities. But let's not talk about that. So that was the Manhattan Project for America. So the China's own Manhattan Project they are building. So they're building an EUV Manhattan project in China, and they brought all the best scientists together, pretty much unlimited resources, and they are building, this in China, and they're very close. There's unofficial reports that China has already built its own EUV machine, and they are doing their testing and things like that. They have already cracked the code for DUV, so that DUV machine is created by a company called SMEE. And last I heard, that product is still being tested, so I'm not sure if it's out on mass production yet. But the EUV machine apparently has been completed. But this EUV machine that China is testing, China's testing EUV machines in many different ways, by the way. This is not the only way. They are also doing EUV machines with different type of uh, like chips as well. For example, they're using photonic chips to make chips lower than 2 nanometers, and they're using other techniques as well. I'm not going to talk about all the techniques they're using. I'm just here to talk about the Manhattan Project. So apparently this is a game changer, and the full name for this is SSMV EUV, and this is what it is. You can see the picture, and the reason it's shaped like this is basically, think of a particle accelerator. So the main problem with the EUV machine that you know that the humans have to overcome is miniaturizing a, the laser and the wavelength to produce chips. And the actual miniaturization and producing the right wavelength is a very, very difficult process. That's probably the most difficult process to do. And that's the difference between the DUV machine and the EUV machine. But what this particle accelerator type site will do is basically, let me show you an actual picture. I'm not going to go through the whole process of it, but I'm just here to make you understand, make things easier for you guys. So here's talking about the wavelengths and stuff. So this is it, guys. You can see. So this is a circular. You can see the circular. What they're going to have is they're going to have these the actual lasers going around in a circle, and this is a better example. So the picture you see in blue, that is the actual laser. So it goes round, and see these boxes here on the bottom, the purple and blue boxes. These are EUV machines. So you have all of these detectors and all of these other products basically creating this laser. And this laser will fire up these EUV machines all together at once. So instead of miniaturizing the lasers and having the right wavelength, you will basically have one site powering up dozens and dozens of EUV machines at once. So this means that they can scale up these EUV machines. They can have hundreds of these EUV machines on site, producing billions and billions worth of chips, all in one site, by the way. Because this laser, rather than miniaturizing it, will basically power up all of these machines at the same time. So think of it like some sort of rack. I don't know if you guys have done rack. Virtual servers. How you have many servers power. If you put 10 workstations together, if you join them up together, you have the power of 10 workstations at your fingertips rather than have one. So it's basically like that. It's just a rack system and a virtual rack networking system. So they're going to have a high power lasers going through these machines, powering up these lasers, and these lasers will individually produce the chips that they need. And this is, it's like a ring, and as you can see, SSMB storage ring. And it gets very complicated and technical, but I'm not going to go into the technical aspect of it. But I just wanted to kind of show you what this project is all about. I'll send you the link for this document so you can have a read. And rather than me trying to explain the full document to you, it's probably better if you guys have a quick read and you'll explain all the how they're going to do it, what systems they're using, and what process they're using. They even go down to the level of the what processors and how they're going to do it, plus all the mirrors, where they're going to get the mirrors from. And it's a very complicated process, but this is what China has been working on. And I believe once this comes out, it's going to be the end of companies like ASML. You can see a picture of ASML there. So this picture is basically showing an ASML machine put into a cargo ship. And this plane gets travels around the world and delivers these products. The problem with ASML is, they have released their quarterly earnings, and they have shown that the earnings they are getting from China has gradually reduced. Used to be around 30 to 40% a couple of years ago, but now it's gone down to around 10%. China is not buying ASML machines anymore, but not because they don't want to, mainly because America tells ASML not to sell to China. So they are not allowed to sell the high-end EUV machines. And now they are not even allowed to sell the DUV machines. America has banned ASML from selling DUV machines to China as well. So there's nothing left to sell to China. ASML is is a company that's going to pretty much die when China releases its own EUV machine, because the world will start buying from China. They're not going to bother with ASML. What is the point of buying from ASML when they are basically puppets? If America one day wakes up and tells them, tells ASML, do not sell to this country, do not sell to this company, and what are you going to do? Companies, puppet companies like this, you cannot have any business with them whatsoever. Because one day they will just wake up and stop supplying you products or spare parts. And these products are very expensive, by the way. I think one high-end EV machine costs around 400 million or something like that. Almost half a billion, almost half a billion, guys. So they don't come cheap. So imagine if you're a country or a company who buys 400 million worth of EUV machines, then America tells ASML, do not sell to that company, sanction that company, and do not do any sort of support or give them spare parts. So if your machine starts breaking down and you need spare parts and you cannot buy these spare parts from ASML, what are you going to do? You're stuck. If your system doesn't work and you need support, and ASML says, sorry, America asked us to sanction you, we cannot help you. So you've wasted all that money, guys. So ASML, I saw another article saying that ASML is basically they are they're getting rid of some of their people as well. They are, their quarterly earnings are not very good. And also companies like TSMC, they are not buying from ASML anymore because these products are so expensive. You cannot buy these products every single year. These are more like a one-off purchase. So TSMC have already got all of their purchases that they need, and it takes years of using that product and developing your chips and working the best way to develop the chips from the product. So it takes years and years of work. So you cannot keep doing this every single year, buy 400 million worth of new equipment, then training your staff to use them. It just doesn't make any business sense. So TSMC has not been buying. Also, a lot of other companies have not been buying, and ASML cannot sell to China. So they are losing a lot of money, guys. That's why they had to let go of a lot of staff recently. So yeah, things are not looking good for the West. China is slowly creeping up and catching up to the semiconductor technology, and the semiconductor technology is probably the last. It's the last boss. It's the last thing that the West has hold over China. Everything else China can do, in-house. They can do locally. There's nothing else the West can do that China cannot. So this is the last piece of puzzle that China needs to figure out and how to make by themselves. And once they do, it's over, guys. Absolutely over for the West. It's over for ASML, it's over for Intel, it's over for Samsung, TSMC. The world is just going to change overnight. Countries are going to start buying Chinese EV machines, Chinese chips, because they're going to be much cheaper. And yeah, it's going to be over, guys. Once that happens, you're going to see a massive market crash when that happens. So that's it for me, guys. This is obviously part one for the video. Keep an eye out for part two. It's going to be on my new channel. The links are going to be on the description. And I'll see you soon, guys. Take care for now. Bye-bye.